Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
And here we are. John, you know what? I have to tell you something happening over the weekend, which, there aren't too many things that make me go like, holy cow, I can't believe I'm hearing this. Yeah. But something happened over the weekend, okay? First off, I don't know how I heard this, but in one of my cars, I have Sirius Radio, which I have never, ever, ever used. And mainly because I don't subscribe.
Why didn't you use it? Why don't you use it?
Because I don't subscribe. So, it's...
okay. I thought you meant you had a subscription.
No. If you know the deal on the Sirius radios, which they put them in the cars.
I had it for many years, yeah.
Well, if you don't have a subscription, when you hit the button, it's just like there's a channel that comes up that's just like one long commercial. Hey, you're listening to Sirius XM radio, and if you subscribed, you'd hear this and this and this and this. So what's interesting was, I, by just sheer accident, hit the Sirius button on my radio. I'm driving along, and the promo comes on, and it says, hey, and you're listening to 3 free days of Sirius XM. Yes, every channel is available for you to take a listen to, and we know you're going to want to subscribe. So jump on in, take a listen to all the different channels, and call us at 800, blah, 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 and subscribe, okay? So I go, that's sort of cool. So I start, and I go to my phone. Matter of fact, I went to eat lunch, and I'm sitting in my car eating my lunch, which John never does. And I'm sitting there, and I pull up on the channel index on the internet. I say, okay, let me look what all the channels are. So I go, and they're all grouped together. You have the music channels, then you have all the different things, the political channels, the news channels. So they're all like in the 160 range. So I, thought, this is sort of cool. Here's C-SPAN radio, and here's Fox News radio, here's Fox headlines, the whole bit. So yesterday morning, I'm driving around, and I'm sort of enjoying and by the way, today's the last day. So if you have Sirius in your car, but you don't have a subscription, you can actually listen to anything today, but today's it. Tomorrow it'll be gone. Okay, so I come on yesterday morning, I come on the MSNBC channel. Now, this is a simulcast of their over-the-air channel, okay? I don't have cable, so I cannot watch or listen to MSNBC. And so I'm listening to this program it's called The Weekend. And I'm like, I don't believe what I'm hearing. Once again, and let me just preface this by saying, everybody knows now that CNN is turned into sort of this very left-wing, I don't even want to call it a news channel anymore. I mean, there's a lot of different, we had Don Lemon, and we had, who was the other guy? Who was the guy, the governor's brother, was Chris Cuomo was on there.
Oh, Cuomo, yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And all these very, 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 very left-wing talk show hosts and people like that. So the difference between CNN and MSNBC is that CNN essentially is a standalone news operation, whereas MSNBC is under the umbrella of NBC News, which some people will say once upon a time was a reputable news operation, Huntley and Brinkley, all that kind of stuff, and now has sort of degenerated into, well, once again, not the most, I guess we'd say, down the middle news organization. When you have the MSNBC or the Meet the Press, which was Chuck Todd, who was obviously in the tank for the Democrats, and he handed off the baton to Kristen Welker, who's once again not the most down the middle people. Anyway, I'm listening to this MSNBC show, and I'm going like, I can't believe what I'm hearing. It was probably the most slanted. I mean, sometimes you and I listen to clips off of CNN that are very biased against Republicans and specifically Trump. This made CNN look like grade school kids. And I'm going like, I don't believe what I'm hearing. And
was it about the Trump trial, or what was it about?
It was a round table. They were talking about this, but the majority of what they're talking, I probably listened for half an hour, 45 minutes. And the majority of what they were talking about Trump and how he's guilty, he's a terrible person. How does this country even allow someone to, like, for him to exist? Why is he allowed to even have his name on the ballot? I mean they were just, I'm going like, and they were talking about how the trial was so fair. And that Alvin Bragg did such a great job, and these terrible things that Trump perpetrated upon the American people, these terrible things that he did, that he was doing all these, he was paying non-disclosure, paying money for NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and if he wasn't such a bad person, why was he having people sign NDAs? And they go on and on and on. Okay, then I guess it was like, at 8 o'clock, they sign off and they go, okay, what's coming on at 8 o'clock? There's a guy, I don't know who this is, and he doesn't give his first name. He comes on, he's got a voice like this, talking like this, and he calls himself Velshi. Have you ever heard of this before?
No, I haven't. It sounds like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
Well, and his name, like I said, I have to look it up, and he just said, well, this is Velshi. I don't know if his first name's Bell, his last name's She. I don't know what it is. And he made the round table look like they were nonpartisan journalists. I mean,
oh, wow.
I'm going like, I don't even believe what I'm hearing. And once again, I understand that everyone has a bias, but I'm sort of old school that my journalism professor, Dr. Camille Winter, ingrained upon us that a journalist tries to be as neutral as possible. A journalist tries to give the facts, and in most cases, give both sides of the story. If there is Donald Trump is accused of a bookkeeping malfeasance, you give the fact that you bring up a professor of bookkeeping and professor or accounting, whatever, and a professor says, well, in the real world that shouldn't happen because it should have been listed as a blah 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 blah, and then you bring up an attorney and then you bring up a bookkeeper and you tell all sides of the story. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. At least it doesn't at all. So this. I got to look at what this guy's name is. So I was shocked at how biased MSNBC was. Now, I know people have talked about the fact that everybody kids about the Morning Joe with Joe and Mika and how he used to be, I think he was a Republican. Wasn't he a Republican representative from like Florida or something like that?
Yeah, he was. And that was the surprising thing. I always remember thinking like, that can't be the same guy, and it is.
Well, here, let me look up Velshi, okay? Let me see if I can find Velshi. I have no idea who this is. Velshi. Velshi Trailers. They make trailers. Mike Velshi. I'll look at in the break. I'll look at more who Velshi is. If somebody knows who Velshi is, 314-280-8880. I guess that's how you pronounce it or spell it, Belsh. Anyway, it was just sort of shocking to me. And once again, this is supposedly unbiased news. Unbiased news. And it was anything but that. And at least when you watch shows like, remember the old days you had, matter of fact, they used to do skits on Saturday Night Live. This is going way back where you had on back in the days of 60 Minutes where you had point and counterpoint. Remember that? Where they had,
yeah, I do remember that.
Where they had the dude who was it was a woman, she went first, and then the dude would essentially refute everything they said. And they essentially were really giving both sides of the issue. They were saying, here's someone who's pro whatever it was, here's someone who's con whatever it was. And I always thought that was interesting that they would go at it, left and right like that, and literally left and right. Anyway. Okay, seconding, a bunch of stuff to talk about this morning. We talked about this before, and I found this fascinating, that when you have renewable energy, that something that people don't talk about with renewable energy is renewable energy being somewhat fragile. We've had the situation around here in the St. Louis area as well as all over the country, all over the Midwest and the South, where hailstorms have come through and damaged solar panels, okay? I found this website where somebody, I don't know if this is the people that are actually operating the windmills in Iowa and Nebraska and places like that, but they have drone footage of what happened to the windmills, the wind generators.
Oh, no.
Hit by the tornadoes. OMG. I mean,
I haven't seen it. No. And where is it from?
What's that?
Where is it? Where's the location?
Location is, there's several of them in Iowa, okay?
Iowa. Okay.
There are several of them. Matter of fact, they have 4 images. There's a couple of them, and these are all drone shots. A couple of them that literally the windmills, the entire structure just collapsed and it's laying in the ground. And in some cases, it's in a farmer's field. You know, they plow around it the whole bit. And what's left of the turbine is just literally junk in a farmer's field. And then they have a couple pictures of where the actual structure, the pole is still standing, but the windmill on top is destroyed. I mean, the blades are missing. It actually looks like the thing caught fire because there's burn marks all over the top and stuff like that. So once again, this is the kind of thing that, and let's say a big tornado, like let's go back to the horrible Joplin tornado, which just, killed 100+ people and destroyed a hospital, which wasn't that old. Mercy had to rebuild the hospital. So let's say a big storm comes through and takes out, 10, 20, 30 wind turbines, turbines, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. I mean, what does that do to the output of the power? I mean, doesn't it diminish it by quite some amount? And remember, I talked about this guy that I heard, and I actually did some deep dive into this guy. The guy was giving some very interesting statistics. Talked about the fact that that if you have, and he gave, I'm going to throw out 750 megawatts. I'm just throwing out a number. He threw out a number. He said if you have a 750 megawatt coal-fired plant, that plant would typically sit on 15 to 40 acres, depending upon how it was built. But if you had a 750 megawatt solar field, it would take 5,000 acres. So you're going like, okay, let's think about this for a minute. You got relatively compact, and you think about it. You go out to Labadee. You can go to any of the wineries like Mount Pleasant. And you look across the river into Franklin County. You're in St. Charles County there in Augusta, and you look across the river, and you can see the Labadee plant. Big old monster stacks, but it doesn't have a big footprint. I mean, I don't know how big the property is. I have a friend of mine who used to work there. I could call him up and say, hey, how many acres is the Labadee plant? Let's say it's 50 acres, okay? And it puts out the equivalent power of a solar field, which has 5,000 acres. And once again, if a storm comes through, or a tornado comes through and rips up the solar panels, or it just jostles them around, or the hail comes and breaks all the glass that protects, the actual solar, the silicon cells and stuff like that. I mean, you're out of power. And it's not like you can go and just, we'll just fix them, okay? You should see these pictures of the wind turbines in Iowa. I mean, they're just totally destroyed. The ones that are knocked over. I mean, they got to start over on those. That's like, can't
you just plug into the nearby Tesla charging station or anything that's roadside? Like, I heard that there's at least 8 of them around the country. I learned this from a Pete Buttigieg interview, that there's at least 8 of them around the country. Couldn't you just get if you had a long enough extension cord, couldn't you just plug into one of those?
We played that audio. I've heard that run at every talk show I listen to. And
I have too, Brad, ever since you brought it up, and you're the one that smartened me up to it.
And the crazy thing is, he just doesn't, if you know the whole story, he was on NBC or something like that, and the reporter, he's on an interview show, and the reporter started quizzing him about, in 2021, the federal government, was it $7.5 billion? Wasn't that the number, $7.5 billion?
But at a certain point, money means nothing.
Right. She says, well, in 2021, you guys appropriated $7.5 billion for solar, for vehicle charging stations, and so far there's been 7 or 8 of them built. Now, he launches it, but our goal is 2030, blah, 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 blah. And then he talks about how tough it is. I'm the guy's going like, okay, so how come Tesla figured this out? How come Tesla's...
Yeah.
Why would you call up Tesla and say, hey, Elon, we got $7.5 billion. How many charging stations could you put in? Now, here's my other question that nobody answers, okay? Have you ever gotten gas at the federally owned gas station?
No.
Okay, because guess what? There are no federally owned gas stations, at least ones that you and I can go to. I would imagine if you have a fleet vehicle, like if you're work for, one of the government agencies and you have there's a motor pool, that there's probably a gasoline pump there. But that's for fleet vehicles only, okay? So when the government puts in these charging stations, how do you pay for them? Is it free? And if you do pay for it, Is the government giving you the best deal? Are they giving you, like we measure how expensive gasoline is price per gallon, how much per gallon, how many dollars or cents, whatever it is per gallon. Is the government charging station twice what the Tesla stations are? Or what is it, Charge America, the ones that are in the parking lot at some of the Wally Worlds and things like that? How does that work? Who makes the money? Are they doing it for profit, not for profit? Are they just passing along their costs? And if they're passing along their costs, and if they spent $7.5 billion and they've got 8 charging stations, that means that if you charged your car for what, half an hour would be $3 million? That would be what charge it? If you're figuring.
So, but you're forgetting that it's sponsored by the Corporation for Public Charging. So the money doesn't go directly to the charging station. Taxpayers fund the Corporation for Public Charging, which then gives the money to the operators of the charging station, Brad. It's entirely different.
What John is referring to is a particular issue.
I think people get it, Brad.
Well, no.
And if not, we could just wink at them. But I would explain. You can't explain it though.
Yes, you can, because what John needs to what John needs to be, there's nuance to what John was saying, is that the NPR people are saying they don't get money from Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They do get a small amount of money for Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but what they do get, they get money from their affiliates who get money from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So in other words, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting gives KWMU money, and in turn, KWMU sends that money to NPR. So isn't that sort of like laundering money? I mean, but why don't you and I, Brad Rooker, why don't we start the Corporation for Public Charging? Doesn't that seem like the kind of thing that you and I could run remarkably inefficiently and skim a little money off the top? And have nice jobs and have nice office.
And you would have, suddenly we find out that all the charging stations are, they're not at Chesterfield Mall where they should be with the Teslas. They're in your garage and my garage, right.
and our friends' garages and their friends' garages and our relatives' garages, they all have charging stations. I don't know. There are so many things. I mean, once again, we had a situation where we had the COVID thing come in, and everybody shut down their businesses and people were forced to close and yada, 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 yada. Look at the repercussions of that, okay? I say this all the time, the law of unintended consequences, that when you go to a situation where all of a sudden, within so many years, you're going to force everybody into an electric car, whether they want it or not, like in California, whether they want it or not, you're forced into an electric car, and the infrastructure is not there and probably won't be there for what, 10, 20, 30 years?
A long time, yeah. But you know what? That's, again, Brad, you can't put a price tag on doing what's right for the environment. And until Egbert supports a carbon neutral radio station, I don't think you can pass judgment on it, Brad.
John. Okay, we have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?